Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg, and you know Teddy. He is very happy and very excited to join me today to talk about the winners of the 2025 National Book Awards. I am mostly going to talk about fiction here, but I will also talk about translated fiction, and I'll cover the other books that won. I'll talk a little bit about the ceremony and all of that good stuff. I'll have links to all of the books that won a National Book Award in the description box down below, both the physical book and the ebook, as well as any other books from the long lists that I mention in this video. So to explain this, I talked in my most recent Friday Reads video about how I moved the chair from the corner by the window to here so Teddy could sit in it while I work. That was going great. But starting at the end of the workday yesterday and now into today, obviously, he has been a lot more demanding of like, hey, there's not enough physical contact and you're not paying enough attention to me. So I'm just going to keep crawling into your lap. And that's where we are right now. I just played with him to see if that would tire him out a little bit. And apparently it did not. So we'll see how long he actually stays here in my lap. He may jump down at some point because I don't think the mechanics of the situation would work for him to turn around and crawl back into the chair. But so we're just going to go with this. All right. So the winners of the 2025 National Book Awards, let's run through the other categories and I'll talk about them a little bit and a little bit about the ceremony. Actually, let's talk about the ceremony first. That would kind of make a lot of sense. So I do usually watch the ceremony live because they live stream it every year. And this year I was not able to. Yesterday I was just exhausted toward the end of the day, and we had to have somebody come to the house like right as the ceremony was starting for a repair. So I knew it just wasn't going to work for me to watch live this year. So I had to catch up to the ceremony this morning in order to film this. And I will say it felt a little bit like the ceremony was kind of overlong. I think if you were in the room, maybe it wouldn't have felt that way. But when you're watching, they sort of treat it a little bit more like a traditional award ceremony, like the Golden Globes or something like that. And I think that is their right. Sometimes it works a little bit better. You know, there were 2 musical performances. It just felt like there was a lot of stretching in this year's ceremony. And that could also be because I was trying to watch the ceremony before the workday began. And so I just was feeling that stress of like, okay, let's get to the important stuff so I can start filming and get to work. And I'm sure that added a lot of undue pressure, but it did feel a little bit like there was a lot of stretching in this year's ceremony. Jeff Hiller, an actor who recently won an Emmy Award and who is an author, because usually they'll pick someone funny or notable who has some book connection, either upcoming or recently released, to host the ceremony. And he was the selection for this year. He was pretty funny. I think in the way that I feel about the whole ceremony, it kind of felt like other years have been better overall for this ceremony itself. But he was funny. He had some funny stories. I don't think it felt as much like there was enough glue to hold the ceremony together to make it really feel like the Golden Globes or something like that. And then we started getting into the winners. And I will say, I don't think anybody really had a standout speech until we got to the end. And, you know, the stories were fine, but they didn't have the impact. Like a lot of the time when I watch the National Book Awards, there are speeches that are just fantastic and inspire you. You know, the year that Melinda Lowe won the Young People's Literature Award for Last Night at the Telegraph Club, her speech was so good that I immediately ordered a copy of her book because I wanted to have it and to support her. And that didn't really happen, but that also probably didn't happen because 2 of the winners are books that I actually currently have from the library. So there's a possibility of that was at play. But I didn't feel particularly inspired. Even the Lifetime Achievement Awards, the Literarian Prize went to Roxane Gay. She gave an interesting speech, but it didn't feel compelling. She seemed a little nervous in her speech, which felt a little odd for her, but there was a lot of interesting stuff in her speech, but it didn't feel particularly passionate. George Saunders did a little bit better. He was more present in the moment and funnier. So I enjoyed his speech a bit more than Roxane Gay, which is a surprise. I would have guessed that it would be the other way around. And then the speeches for young people's literature, it was a good speech, but again, didn't really inspire me to pick up the book. So the winner for young people's literature was The Teacher of Nomadland, a World War II story by Daniel Nayeri. He talked about the experience of being an immigrant in the country and a previous job that he had. He worked across the street from an immigration center in New York City. So it would prompt him to think about how he came to the country seeking asylum, and he was working alongside people who were in the same boat, so to speak. And again, it was a good speech. There was no bad speech, but I didn't feel inspired or uplifted. And, again, that could come down to the fact that I was trying to fit this ceremony in the morning before the workday starts. So that sense of anxiety of like, I need to get this in could have kept me at a bit of a remove from the rest of the ceremony, but we'll never know. The winner for the Translated Literature Prize, and this is one I want to focus on a little bit because I followed the long list and the finalists this year. I don't usually do that for the Translated Literature category, but I wanted to give a bit of a focus to that because I am someone who has been trying to branch into the world of translated literature more and more and more in recent years. So it is of interest to me. I had really thought that the winner was going to be Sad Tiger by Negi Sino. I can't really see because I have Teddy on my lap, but I really thought that was going to win the translated literature category, but it didn't. The winner was We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriela Cabezon Camara. This is one of the ones that I got from the library and translated by Robin Myers. This had jumped out to me from the long list. Sad Tiger actually sounds like something that would be well worth reading, but the feedback I've gotten on it is that it's so good, but it's so devastating. And I'm having an anxiety year, so I don't know that I would be prepared for that right now. I would like to give it a shot at some point. But the one that really jumped out to me was this one. So I feel a little, fancy because I kind of picked the one that ended up winning. And I've been on a hold list ever since the long list was announced for this book. And it just became available a week ago. The problem is I've been reading very slowly this week. So I haven't gotten to this one yet. And it's the shorter loan. So I guess technically I probably should have started with this one, but I didn't. This is sort of like a satire of the Spanish conquest and using, I believe, a real figure, and it is a queer story. And so I'm very happy that a story like this was uplifted. I think the National Book Foundation is pretty good about uplifting queer voices and queer stories. And I'm excited to read this. Gabriela Cabezon Camara gave her speech in Spanish, and her reasoning for that, explained by translator Robin Myers, was that there are fascists in this country who don't like someone speaking in Spanish. So, that was kind of funny. That was a nice fiery moment that the ceremony needed. I think a lot of the time it felt like it was trying to get around the topic of politics. It only really got political toward the end. And not that everyone needs to address the current state of the world, but it definitely, the best moments were times when someone was taking a shot like that. And I deeply appreciated that. So I can't wait to read this book. And I'm excited that it ended up winning. I really had thought that Sad Tiger would win translated literature, but, here we are. And I'm glad that I have been following along with the translated literature category this year. The winner of poetry is The Intentions of Thunder by Patricia Smith. I am not really a poetry guy. I occasionally try. This is probably one that I should pay attention to. Also, it has a gorgeous cover. I'm not going to spend a lot of time putting up the covers of the other books that won, that I don't have in my hand to show you, but I'm going to put this one up because what an incredible, eye-catching cover that is. And I know Matthew Sharapa, who I don't think he has an active channel anymore, but he's on Instagram, is a huge fan of this book. And he is a poetry guy. So part of me is curious, and maybe I should get around to that. But there's so many books that I would want to get to. I don't know. If you've read this book and you think it might be accessible to someone who is not typically into poetry, let me know what you thought in the comment section down below, because that is an area I need to read outside my comfort zone a bit and explore more. So then we get to the nonfiction category. And I didn't mention anything about this in my Friday Reads where I predicted what would win the translated literature category and the fiction category. But I felt very confident that One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar Al-Akkad would be the winner. I thought if anything was going to spoil, it would have been Yi Yun Lee, but that didn't happen. Omar Al-Akkad did end up winning the prize. I've heard so many good things about One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. I feel like my anxiety this year has prevented me from reading it just because I feel like I'm spending a little bit more time. I'm trying to balance exposure to the news and hiding a little bit from the news to protect my mental health and emotional well-being. And I'm a little worried that if I were to read this book right now, sometimes a book like this can give you a sense of hope and purpose. I'm a little worried that it would do the opposite. So I'm going to let a little bit of time pass. That's my plan. Omar Al-Akkad did give a good speech. That to me felt like where it started to get a little bit more fiery. He was a little bit subtle, a little bit funny, and very intelligent and outspoken on the issues that I'm sure you can find in the book. So I was happy that he won and had a chance to speak and to say these things. Like I said, I think the final two prizes, which were nonfiction and fiction, are kind of where the ceremony picked up for me. So that was one of the high points. But the absolute high point for me was the fiction category. I mean, it is the fiction category that I am most interested in when it comes to following the National Book Award. I love that they have these other categories, in particular because it does help me branch out from my own corner of the reading world. And I appreciate all of that. Like I said, Last Night at the Telegraph Club was a winner of the Young People's Literature category. And I read it and I loved that book. I thought it was really interesting. So there are books that I have been exposed to because of the National Book Awards outside of the typical realm where I read. I feel like Teddy wants down, but he's not jumping. So that's interesting. But so, the fiction category is the highlight for me anyway, because it's the category I follow most closely. It's the books that I am most familiar with in the race. And I'm going to put him down because he seems to want to jump, but he's not doing it. So let's just avoid disaster and I'll help him. Okay. So yeah, there's that aspect. But then I thought the winner gave probably my favorite speech of the night. And the winner of the fiction prize was The True Story of Raja the Gullible and His Mother by Rabi Alamuddin. I feel like every time I say his name, it sounds like I'm saying Robbie, like Robby. His name is not Robbie. His name is Robbie. It's spelled Rabih. I believe the library sticker is covering his name. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear. His name is not Robbie, it's Rabi. There you go. And I just got this from the library. I did start this book, but have barely gotten into it right now. And there's been a funny trend with the predictions that I have made for book prizes recently, because when I was in a Friday Reads video predicting what was going to win the Booker Prize, I narrowed it down to two different books. And I made a prediction, and of the two, I went in a different direction. So I narrowed it down to The Land in Winter and Flesh. And I thought Land in Winter would triumph over Flesh, but then Flesh won. When I made my prediction for the National Book Award in my most recent Friday Reads video, I narrowed it down to the true story of Raja the Gullible and his mother, and A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Majumdar. And the same exact thing happened. I zigged in the direction of A Guardian and a Thief, and the National Book Foundation zagged, and we got the true story of Raja the Gullible and his mother. And I'm happy about that because I think both books really felt like they would be worthy winners. I haven't read A Guardian and a Thief yet, and I'm only about 10 pages into this book, but I am entranced by the opening of this book. So this is obviously the story of Raja the Gullible and his mother, and the opening 10 pages where you start to get to know him and his mother and the dynamic that exists between them. So the workday is starting. I just got my first work call, which interrupted where I was at. Teddy is obviously back and wanting to step into my lap. So I'll make this quick. Yeah, the 10 chapters where you get to know Raja the Gullible and his mother, it's very compelling. It's very funny, but you get the sense of serious things going on, serious elements in this dynamic between them. And it makes me very interested in going on through the rest of the book. I'm so excited to read it. I've gotten good feedback on it from other people who have read it. And from just the end of the description of the book on the inside flap, it says, told in Raja's irresistible and wickedly funny voice, the novel dances across 6 decades to tell the unforgettable story of a singular life and its absurdities. A tale of mistakes, self-discovery, trauma, and maybe even forgiveness. Above all, the true story of Raja the Gullible and his mother is a wildly unique and sparkling celebration of love. I mean, who doesn't love that? Who doesn't need that in a year where it feels more than ever like the world is just on fire? And it is a queer story, and Rabi Al-Madin's speech was delightful. It was a little bit funny, it was a little bit self-deprecating, it was a little bit serious, but mostly just funny and entertaining. He is a great presence, and that sense of humor really shines in the true story of Raja the Gullible. And I believe Rabi Al-Madin had been a finalist for the National Book Award. Yeah, it does say he was a finalist for the National Book Award before. I believe that was for An Unnecessary Woman. And I would like to read that book. I would also like to read The Wrong End of the Telescope. I got that from the library and started it and then just was not in the mood. So I ended up returning it. But this is definitely an author that I would like to experience more. I will have a link to the ceremony if you want to watch these speeches or any of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I have to get to work. But if you have thoughts about the ceremony, the books that won, if there were books that you would have rather seen up at the podium or authors you would rather have seen at the podium, let me know that in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.